She signed a deal she never imagined would change her life forever. 1 year of fake marriage to Kang Ji-hoon, Korea's coldest billionaire CEO, for $500,000. The rules were simple. Pretend to love, survive the year, then walk away. But 6 months in, the rules didn't matter anymore. The man who was supposed to be stone cold became possessive, obsessed, completely in love. When Zara tried to leave, he didn't just stop her. He looked into her eyes and said 4 words that shattered every plan she had. Is greater than, "You're forever mine, Zara." Before we continue, please comment where you are watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travels, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Zara sat beside her mother's hospital bed, holding her frail hand. The steady beep of the heart monitor felt like a countdown. Every test, every bill, every medicine they couldn't afford pressed down on her like a weight she couldn't escape. Her mother's weak smile didn't hide the fear in her eyes. Zara's heart twisted. She had to do something. That's when Kang Ji-hoon entered her life. Tall, precise, and exuding power, he seemed like a man carved from ice. "I can help," he said, voice calm and cold, like he was offering a business deal, not a life-saving choice. He explained the terms clearly. Marry him for 1 year, act as husband and wife, then part ways. $500,000. 1 year, freedom afterward. Zara's mind raced. Pride battled desperation. She could feel her mother's eyes on her, pleading. Could she give herself to a stranger just to save her mother's life? She tried to imagine her life under Ji-hoon's roof, strict rules, isolation, and a man who looked through people like they were objects. But her mother's weak cough broke her thoughts. She made her decision. Signing the contract felt surreal. The paper was cold under her fingers, but the weight of it felt heavier than any pen could measure. She glanced at Ji-hoon, expecting the coldness he promised. Instead, he studied her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. Not anger, not disdain. Something else: curiosity, interest, perhaps even concern. Zara swallowed hard. She had saved her mother, yes, but at what cost? As she left the hospital, Ji-hoon's sharp gaze followed her. For the first time, Zara wondered if she had just made a deal with fate or with a man who would change everything about her life. Zara stepped into Ji-hoon's penthouse, and the world seemed to change. Marble floors gleamed under bright chandeliers, and sleek furniture reflected a life she had only seen in magazines. Everything was perfect and cold. The walls, the air, even Ji-hoon himself. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, arms crossed, watching her with a look that made her feel both small and exposed. "Follow the rules," he said simply, his voice firm. "You are my wife for 1 year. That is all." Zara nodded, trying to hide the nervous tremor in her hands. She had expected strictness, but his control was sharper than she imagined. Every movement, every word seemed calculated, leaving no room for mistakes or freedom. The first night was the hardest. She slept on a crisp, cold bed, the silence of the penthouse pressing in. She could hear his footsteps pacing above, his presence a constant, silent reminder that this was not her home. But then came small, unexpected moments. A door opened for her without a word. A scarf draped over her shoulders when she shivered. He watched her sometimes, just long enough that she could feel his attention like a weight, but he never said more. Zara realized she was walking a line between fear and curiosity. She had signed up for a deal, a business arrangement. Yet there was something in his eyes, a flicker of something she couldn't name: vulnerability, interest, perhaps even the beginning of something dangerous. She tried to remind herself, 1 year, that was all. But as she settled into this strange, luxurious prison, she wondered, was she truly the one in control, or had Ji-hoon already claimed more than just her signature? Days turned into weeks, and Zara began to notice cracks in Ji-hoon's icy facade. The man who once measured every word and gesture now lingered in her presence longer than necessary, a hand brushing hers as he handed her a document. A cup of tea left on her desk with a note that read only, "Don't work too late." Simple gestures, yet they made her heart pound with confusion. Zara hated how much she was affected. This was a contract, a deal. She was supposed to remain detached, to leave after 1 year without becoming part of his world. Yet every time he looked at her, something inside her shifted. Ji-hoon's eyes, once sharp, unreadable, and cold, now seemed alive, intense, almost vulnerable. Hae-rin appeared subtly at first. She smiled at social events, complimented Ji-hoon's achievements, and watched Zara with eyes that didn't hide their sharp edge. Zara sensed the tension immediately. Hae-rin wasn't just a figure from Ji-hoon's past. She was a storm gathering on the horizon. Her presence made Zara tense, aware that their fragile balance could shatter at any moment. Meanwhile, Zara began to see layers of Ji-hoon no one else did. He argued fiercely in boardrooms, ruthless and calculating. But behind closed doors, he seemed human, capable of kindness, patience, and even humor. It confused her. How could a man so cold and commanding in public be tender and protective in private? The tension between them became electric. A single look could speak volumes. A soft word could send Zara's pulse racing. Yet she remained cautious. She refused to surrender entirely to these feelings. She reminded herself daily, 1 year, just 1 year. But even as she clung to this thought, she felt the shift. Ji-hoon wasn't just a contract anymore. He was a presence she couldn't ignore, a force pulling her into a world of passion, obsession, and danger. And with Hae-rin watching from the shadows, Zara realized that the game had only just begun, and that her heart might already be at stake. Zara hadn't expected life to change so suddenly. The delicate balance of their contract marriage had shifted. Ji-hoon was no longer the distant, calculated CEO she had signed up with. He had become possessive, attentive, and unrelenting in his focus on her. Every word, every glance, every movement seemed calculated to claim a part of her she wasn't ready to give. Then the news came: Zara was pregnant. The moment the doctor confirmed it, her mind spun with fear and confusion. She had entered this agreement to save her mother, not to bring a child into a life shadowed by contracts and power struggles. Her first instinct was to hide it, to protect herself and the baby, yet the thought of Ji-hoon knowing and reacting sent a jolt through her chest. Ji-hoon, of course, already sensed the change. His watchful eyes noticed every hint, every subtle shift in her behavior. When Zara finally confessed, his reaction was both terrifying and tender. He drew her into his arms, whispering words she hadn't expected. "You're mine. Always." There was no hesitation, no bargaining, just possessive love that made her heart race and fear ignite at the same time. But danger loomed. Hae-rin, Ji-hoon's ex-fiancée, had begun orchestrating plans that threatened more than Zara's heart. Subtle manipulations, whispered lies, and calculated encounters kept Zara constantly on edge. Every moment she stepped outside their home, every social interaction carried a quiet menace. On top of this, whispers of Ji-hoon's family secrets began surfacing: cryptic messages, old rivalries, and hidden betrayals that even he seemed wary to reveal. Zara realized that their world was far more complicated than she imagined, and that her choices, as much as Ji-hoon's, could determine everything. Zara lay awake at night, heart pounding, torn between fear and desire, knowing that nothing in her life would ever be the same. She had signed up for a contract, but now she was caught in a storm of love, obsession, and danger. And as the city lights of Seoul shimmered below the penthouse, Zara understood one thing clearly: her life, her heart, and the future of her child were all entangled in Ji-hoon's relentless, consuming world. Zara stood at the edge of the penthouse balcony, staring out at the glittering city below. The wind whipped her hair around her face, but it did little to clear the whirlwind inside her. Her heart was racing not from fear, though there was plenty of that, but from the storm of emotions Ji-hoon had awakened in her. Possession, obsession, love, and danger were all tangled together, leaving her breathless and unsure. Ji-hoon appeared behind her without a sound, his presence solid and unyielding. "You shouldn't be here alone," he said, his voice low, firm, and full of that intensity she had learned to fear and crave at the same time. She turned slightly, catching the fire in his eyes, the same fire that had held her captive in moments of tenderness, and yet warned her of his relentless control. The revelation of her pregnancy had changed everything. Ji-hoon's protectiveness had shifted into something fiercer, more consuming. Every decision he made now carried the weight of claiming their future, and he left no room for compromise. Zara wanted to fight it, to remind him that this was supposed to be temporary, a contract, but even saying the words felt impossible. He had become a force she couldn't resist. Meanwhile, Hae-rin was no longer subtle. She had begun weaving her plans, testing Zara, probing weaknesses, and threatening everything Ji-hoon held dear. Zara sensed the danger everywhere, in social gatherings, in whispered phone calls, in the sudden tension that tightened Ji-hoon's jaw. The ex-fiancée's presence was a constant reminder that love and danger were now inseparable in their lives. On top of that, Ji-hoon's family secrets were starting to surface, quietly but relentlessly. Messages from unknown sources hinted at betrayals, financial schemes, and rivalries that could topple his empire. Zara realized she had stepped into a world far more treacherous than she could have imagined, one where one wrong move could cost her everything: her freedom, her child, her life. And yet, despite the fear, despite the danger, she felt a strange certainty. Ji-hoon's obsession, possessiveness, and love were now her shield as much as her challenge. Every moment with him was a battle between heart and mind, desire and caution. As she turned to face him, the tension between them was almost unbearable. He took her hand, holding it with a strength that made her shiver. "We face this together," he whispered. But even as he said it, the shadow of Hae-rin's schemes, the unknown family betrayals, and the stakes of her pregnancy loomed over them. Zara realized that nothing in her life would ever be simple again. She had signed up for 1 year of pretending, but now, every second, every choice, every heartbeat was real, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. Their lives had collided, passion and peril entwined, and the story was far from over. Zara stood in the penthouse, her hands trembling as she touched her growing belly. Ji-hoon approached quietly, his intense eyes softened by something she had rarely seen: care, love, and unwavering devotion. The threats, schemes, and dangers that Hae-rin had tried to unleash were finally gone, neutralized by Ji-hoon's foresight and determination. "I was afraid," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. Ji-hoon lifted her chin gently. "You don't have to be," he said. "I won't let anything hurt you, or our child." For the first time, Zara realized the contract had never been the point. The money, the arrangement, the power it had all led them here, to this fragile, perfect moment of trust and passion. He wrapped his arms around her, and she rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "You're mine," he murmured, "forever." As the lights of Seoul shimmered below, Zara smiled through her tears. The chaos had ended. The danger had faded. What remained was love, fierce, unstoppable, and real. Their story was no longer about survival. It was about family and a future they would face together.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.